Hi, and welcome to the VetStory podcast, home to the most outrageous stories told in VetMed. It's raw, it's unfiltered, unscripted, unedited, just raw, off-the-cuff stories. I'm your host, Reece Generelli, and if you're in the VetMed space in any capacity, and you have a story like this, I want to hear it. So get ready to have a laugh, eyes on the road if you're driving, close the doors, and enjoy the show. And welcome back to another episode of the VetStory podcast. I'm here with a good friend, Keith True from True Vets. Is a particular new episode. We try to do a practice management episode at least once a month to have some sort of structure and to get something out of it other than just a few laughs. But I picked Keith for our very first one because I love what he's doing right now in our industry and our space. He has a vision that I'm not going to spoil for you. I'm going to let him take that lead. But Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast today, especially for the first one of the first practice management ones that you're doing. So
right. I'm excited too. I'm keen to see how this one goes. But as I said, I'm interested. I love what you're doing right now in our space. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my background is in practice co-ownership. So I've co-owned a few hospitals at this point in my career. I got my first practice shares when I was about 2 years out of vet school. And we sold those practices. And I realized during that time of ownership and also like leadership development of my team, that was really what I was called to do and what I found the most passion in doing within our field. And when I left the group of hospitals after, my first 10 years as a veterinarian, I had an idea of what I wanted to build to continue that leadership growth and that interest in practice ownership amongst early career veterinarians. But it took me a little bit of time to put the pieces together to figure out what it was exactly that I wanted to do. For any visions, and what I want to do is it's always big and there's a lot of moving parts to it. So it's hard to kind of put the puzzle pieces together in order to figure out what it is that I wanted to launch into the industry. So, what it's come down to and kind of crystallize that is really, I like to call it like an ecosystem. I'm very passionate about veterinarians becoming practice owners and holding equity in their practices, not just for the leadership component, but also, something that we as veterinarians don't like to talk about, but also the wealth building component of it too. The amount of hours you put in as a veterinarian, as a clinician, as a leader of your team, you deserve to be paid for that as a practice owner. And you can make an extremely good living by building a really, really good practice that is both, supporting the clients that we serve as well as our teams. So when I was trying to figure out what exactly it is I wanted to do, I realized, one problem is we are seeing a decreasing interest in those veterinarians interested in going into practice ownership. So that was one problem I wanted to tackle. So
are you able to say why? Like, do you have a reason why you think?
Data wise, I will say I don't have the exact data other than the numbers that are listed on AVMA website stating so. But I think that there's several factors. I think one is fear. We as students and early career veterinarians, we don't get the business knowledge and the business training or leadership training that we feel like we need to run a practice. So that's one factor. Two, obviously we see a lot of consolidation in the industry at this point. So the need or the ability to own a practice it's not as necessary anymore. It can get really good, high paying corporate jobs. But, for me, I'm not saying for everybody, for me, it was the growth opportunity in that setting just wasn't there for what I wanted to achieve. But I think you combine fear, the thought that you're not going to have work-life balance as a practice owner, and the abundance of jobs that are out there in the corporate setting, I think that those are three big contributing factors to why that interest goes down.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I speak to vets that come through for an interview, not my first question, but my top 10 of those questions always involve, are you interested in ownership? I get a lot of, yeah, maybe. if the right opportunity came along. But, as we look at my last two associates, they were interested, I guess, in ownership, but ultimately said, I look at, my friends, they don't have work-life balance. And, they did say, like, you guys are a little bit different. You're able to have that work-life balance, but you do a lot of delegating, a lot of leadership training. And I don't think I have that knowledge to be able to do so. And I don't have someone to look after the books. I don't have someone to tell me what I can and can't do. And I guess my wife and I are a little bit unique where we play yin and yang there, but they also just say, I like my weekends. I want to go home and switch off and after work, think about it. And that is, I guess, nature of entrepreneurship, unfortunately, where you do need to think about it. You do need to make sure that your business is running right. That's the reward, that's the reward of ownership, though, right?
I completely agree. I'm a huge believer in delegation. I know you are too, based off of our previous conversations, but you don't walk into a practice as an owner on day one and expect to be able to hand everything off. Now, delegation is something that is a learned skill. You need to build trust in the team, but also know, as you, the leader, that you're going to have to hand some things off before you may think that you're ready to, but to instill confidence in those individuals. But I think people will welcome the fact when they're given extra responsibilities and they know that you trust them. And the reward is once you get to a practice that doesn't revolve around you as the clinician and the owner, and your team sees the vision, can take the vision and execute the vision that you instill into that practice, you have the ability to remove yourself from the practice a little bit and allow that practice to operate the same exact way as it did when you were there. And I think that's when we talk about work-life balance and delegation, I think they go hand in hand, because when my previous practices were clicking on all cylinders, what I considered the best part of being an owner in that practice and manager of that practice is when you trust everybody, or you to be able to step out of that practice for 2 weeks, go on vacation with your family, and not receive a phone call, email, text, and anything during those 2 weeks. That's, to me, is what successful practice ownership looks like, because you're making money, you're paying your staff well, you're empowering others, you've got good other leaders within the practice, that it doesn't revolve around you. And that allows you to have that balance, or allows you to open up another practice, allows you to do other things that don't just live in the confines of the four walls of that building.
That's right. And, not to piggyback on I am piggybacking on what you've just said. When I recently came back from Japan with a family trip, and as you just said, I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get an email. I had to do payroll because that's my role. I don't outsource that, but that took me 10 minutes to do. And I did that. Sure, there was a time difference, and I woke up a couple of hours early to do that. But that's a couple of hours of my time that I had to do payroll for. If I outsourced it, then I didn't have to do it at all. I want to touch on this because I get this question a lot. What if they don't do it the same way as I would normally do it? And as you just said before, you may need to hand something off that you're not quite ready to. Just because you've handed something off, though, doesn't mean you don't have control over it. You can oversee something or a project to ensure that these things are still getting done, but you're not the one doing it. You're just guiding that person who you've delegated to, that this is how you want it to be done. You're just overseeing the process still. So you still got control, but not doing the actual work. Now you're just having your check-ins. How's that going? Have we thought about this? Can we do that instead? Is this correct? Oh, that's different. That's something that I wouldn't have thought about, but that looks better than what I had originally. But this is the empowerment, the engagement that you're trying to get from your team. Is that correct?
I completely agree with that statement. You do need to oversee it. Like, you can't just put it behind you and say, hey, I handed that job off and I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like a rowing crew, right? So, you've got somebody who's telling you when to stroke each time, and everybody's doing that. But at the end of the day, you've got to have the leader of the practice, the visionary of that practice, who can see all the moving parts of it and make it work as it's supposed to be. And one thing that I wanted to just say along with what you just said was, when you do hand stuff off, you bring other ideas to the table, and some of those ideas might be better than the ones that you have And I think that's a huge thing that gives people confidence in your leadership, because you can recognize ideas that are good even when they're not yours. And, I obviously I'm a big promoter of entrepreneurship, but one word that we hear less of is intrapreneurship. And those are the people who come with the good ideas from within your organization and are happy to share them. But you, as the leader of that practice, need to be open to hearing them. And when a good idea is in within your hospital, and when you can, how to execute that, through,
No, that's right.
to make it happen.
I think you are the type of person, I think you and I share the same, I guess, visionary status. I've stopped saying this is how I want it done. This is the end goal. How do you guys anticipate this to happen? How would you do this yourself? This is the end goal. This is what my idea is. This is what I'd like to achieve. But how we get there, I actually don't know. What do you guys think? Now, I might know, but I want them to tell me how to get there. Because if I think they're on the off track, I can sort of guide them to where I actually want them to go, but it still becomes their idea. So we use a little bit of a reverse mind trick there just to get them bought in, because I am now saying, I don't know how to do this. You guys know how to do this, but tell me how we can do it together. And it just opens up that floodgates of ideas and engagement, which, hey, you know what? 8 times out of 10, they're better than what I already had to begin with.
Yeah, you've created a team of problem solvers. If you're the one who's dictating everything and how everything is done, then what have you created? You've created a practice or a business or whatever. I think you can relate it to anything that revolves centrally around you. And that's, as
Like
a business owner,
management style.
Yeah, that's top-down management. You need, a web of people that are able to bring good ideas, because at the end of, the analogy that is used, I feel like in every business management book is, if you got hit by a bus, what's going to happen to your business the next day?
Yeah.
And the reality is that top-down management, where you control everything, your business is now in absolute chaos. So you need to be planning for those problems, straight away from, when you're ready. Even, like I said, even before you think you're ready for it.
That's right. I use a leader model. We try our absolute best to ensure that everyone has the ability to be a leader within a team. Even if they're not on a lead status, we want everyone to participate in both training, in both ideas, engagement. So your particular model, though, I wanted to, focus on what that is right now. Tell us, I know what it is, but this is yours. So tell the audience what it is.
So I just recently mentioned the decreasing interest in practice ownership. So I'll kind of be talking about 3 branches of what I'm building. The first is the branch focused at empowering those to get into business ownership, and it's called the Future Practice Owners Society, which you can find on my website, potential.com. But what that is targeting is veterinary students from years 1 through 4, as well as early career veterinarians who have even the most remote interest in practice ownership, and showing them that it's doable, bringing in guest speakers who have done it and can help support it, and then continuing to empower that desire to become a practice owner from day 1 of vet school through the first day of practice ownership. And what that goal is to do is to get those individuals into an ownership position, whether that's 100% on their own, or whether that is kind of feeding into the next arm of what I'm building is, I call it like ownership with training wheels. And what that is targeting is finding veterinarians who want to go into ownership and working at doing either mostly acquisitions of practices that are already there that, maybe aren't appealing to corporate or who want to remain independent, and partnering with that veterinarian as us being the minority partner to help provide them all the tools, the resources, the centralized support, the business training, the leadership training, everything that's needed to know how to run that practice. And over the course of 5 to 7 years, if that veterinarian feels comfortable and wants to take that practice completely independent under their leadership, we will gladly sell our 20% back to that veterinarian so that it remains an independent practice. And I think this model, while, it's like, hey, I don't have full control over this practice, I don't want full control over those practices. I think that goes exactly against what I'm preaching about becoming a business owner. I want to be able to provide those people the avenue to go out and find hospitals that they can then go into and buy. And I want to give them the tools that they need to run successful practices, just like you and I just talked. And when they think that they're ready, then, hey, we are happy to sell that equity back to you and allow you to take your independence. It's not a requirement by any means, but I think it is a different avenue than anybody out there is taking right now. And I think it has potential to change what independent veterinary practice ownership looks like.
Yeah, right. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go buy 100 practices tomorrow. Like, this is just starting. Like, once there's cash flow for this, like, so I'm doing this, and then I'm doing my branded hospitals, which will be, like you said on LinkedIn, that's like my model, and whatever I like to do with that in the long run, I'll keep that there, but it'll still be a joint venture model as well.
So, and again, I want to repeat what I just heard. Your branded model is not the same as partnering with. Okay.
It'll be a partner. You'll still be able to partner in those practices. However, it will be at a minority stake, not a majority stake. Okay. So this is the majority stake avenue.
Do you mind if I mention that? Like, do you mind if I give you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
That's I call it the three-headed monster here, because it's a lot to undertake, but if you don't dream big, then nothing ever happens. So,
okay. So I'm just going to segue into those things. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. So I can't remember where we were. Can't remember where we were just talking about just then before we paused it. Damn it. So I know where we are. So Keith, with people that you want to partner up with, are they? I know that you said you have a startup model. Is it the same thing or is it different?
So I do have a startup model too. That'll be different. So the startup model is something that I'm trying to build the practice of the future. Rethink of what workflows are. Rethink efficiency to tackle our shortage problems that we have. Rethink the client experience. Rethink the team experience, and also affordability and cost of care. I think these are some big things that need to be tackled, and that's what I'm trying to do with the startup model. Where the partner model that I talked about before is trying to revive and reignite interest in independent practice ownership. My startup model is, while still able to do joint ventures within that model, that one is my way of trying to rethink what the veterinary practice looks like moving forward. Because in reality, it hasn't changed in several years. The same basic model, the same workflows have been used forever. And with the tools that we have now, both, AI, technology, everything, I think we can greatly increase our efficiency of how the hospital works, and therefore be able to see more pets while also be able to spend more face-to-face time with clients. And if we can do that, now we're not pushing appointments out 6, 7, 8 weeks down the road because we can't get people in. I truly believe in convenience and getting people in, providing them 24/7 access to a veterinarian through telehealth or teletriage, as well as finding models that are going to work, that I'm not going to say decrease cost of care, but at least cause it to stagnate. Because as you and I both know, the cost of care for pet owners is becoming a problem. And it's causing pet owners to not be able to afford it, or putting themselves, or if they do still move forward with treatment, putting them in significant amounts of debt. And we're obviously, seeing pets euthanized for reasons associated with cost as well. So I want this model to work at tackling that as well.
Okay. So what I've just heard, again, I'll repeat what I've just heard. You've got two models. One is a branded model of True Vet, and the other one is a partnership. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. The partnership is through that acquisition model to, like I said, to continue the path of independence. The startup model and the branded model, that is, by all means, I am welcome to partnership within that too, but that'll be similar to a lot of the other co-ownership or joint venture models that are out there. As long as we can, you can, see the vision and are empowered by that vision and want to see that brought to the pet owners of your community, then it's a conversation that I would want to have.
Now, I remember you spoke about a three-headed monster. Have we got to the third one yet?
So I think those are. So we've got my one is the Future Practice Owner Society. That's to
Right.
increase and empower the partnership model for acquisitions of independent hospitals that want to stay independent or don't have an obvious exit to corporate. That model is designed for people who do want to pursue complete independence. And then we have the branded True Vet hospitals, which, that model is aimed at technology implementation, innovation, client experience, team experience, and just rethinking what the, quote unquote norm of veterinary hospitals is. And looking, that's my futuristic, outlook on veterinary medicine.
Ah, wonderful. Now, I don't know, just throwing it out there, you could have thought about this. You could say, Risha, that's a secret, or no, none at all. The people who do partnerships with you that are can they buy any interest or equity or shares into the True Vet space?
Honestly, I have not finalized anything about that. So this is something that obviously is in its infancy. And as a visionary, those are problems that I will definitely need some integrators to come on board to help formalize all of those things. Long term, yeah, obviously partnerships and equity for members of the team is something that I'm very passionate about. So that has been my plan all along, and I hope to be able to offer those individuals stake within the company so that they can profit off of the success of it as well.
Oh, wonderful. Awesome. That's very different outside the box thinking there. I love that. So I know that you said you opened one recently. Sorry, not opened yet, but opening. And that's your
Correct.
branded one, right?
Yes. Yeah. That'll open this summer out here. It's in Sugar Grove, Illinois, which is somewhat of a smaller town, still about 10,000 people, but the town holds a special place in my heart. That was the town that me and my wife bought our first single family home in and raised our family in for 7 years. We've since moved to a nearby town, actually back to our hometown, but I saw a need for more veterinary care, especially in the model that I'm opening. And I like to have emotional connection to the places and the communities that I'm bringing especially the first one too. So I think that's why we decided on Sugar Grove.
Oh, nice. And do you have an idea? Like, is it meant to be a 2, 3, 4, 5 doctor practice? What is it? What's it built to be?
Yeah, I think it could it's going to be open 7 days a week. Obviously convenience is a big thing that I preach. We're still even being 7 days a week, we're still going to shoot for that work-life balance that everybody looks for. But it has a relatively small footprint. It's 2,500 square feet, which is smaller than what I've done in the past. But as I said, we're focused on efficiency. We're still able to get 6 exam rooms into 2,500 square feet. So I think this very well could be, especially with how many days we're open, 4, 5, 6 doctor practice. So obviously not everybody there at the same time, but we want to balance those schedules.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So Keith, I love everything that you've done, especially in the independent private practice realm. I recently wrote a blog post about the benefits of starting a DeNovo versus buying a existing practice, but also the reason why independence exists versus corporate. Can you give me any insight on that? Because I mean, as I said, I've got 2 blog posts right now coming. Well, I think they're already out about the pros and cons for both. I mean, I love DeNovos. I like them. I also think that DeNovos are only special if you have something special to give, rather than the same thing that opened up next door or down the road. You're going to do your own thing. Now, I understand that everyone has their own touch, everyone has their own culture that they want to build, and their ideas they want to bring forward. But if they're the same as the person down the road, what would make you unique? DeNovo is a startup, may or may not be guaranteed clients if you oversaturated area, whereas a private practice that already exists have a client base. Yes, there are pros and cons. We can go into the cons of equipment, or the culture is very toxic. You have to replace everybody. That's just a fact of life, and you can continue to do that for the rest of your entrepreneurial time. I'm not saying culture is toxic everywhere, but you're always going to be refining that segment of your practice, culture. And I mean, face facts. you are not going to have the same people in your practice for 10 years, 5 years for that matter, but you should have a core, and that core is going to set the tone for the culture for the future. So I don't believe that should be a factor to not buy private practices. Yeah, sure, aging equipment, but that's all going to be factored into the price of the sale anyway. But what can you tell the audience about, or the listeners, about the reason why you should start a DeNovo versus buying a practice, an existing practice? What does it mean for the future with this corporate coming through?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think each situation is different for everybody. What's the most important thing to have on day one? Is it the culture you set from day one? Such as in a startup. Obviously you don't have cash flow on day one in a startup. So that's something you have to take into consideration, especially when you're taking the loans. Like, yes, you can build this beautiful practice. You can have, instill the culture from day one, but you're going to be pulling that money from your loan for that working capital in order to pay those people before you start turning a profit. Everybody's going to be different with how quickly it takes to become profitable, but it's something that some people are very much driven by, and others not so much. Acquisition, entrepreneurship is something that I find very fun. And yes, is it beautiful every single time and stress-free because you can walk into a practice as the owner on day one and you have cash flow right off the bat because of the existing clientele? No, like there's change that needs to happen. And just thinking that you know how to do change management is foolish, because you've got the staff that doesn't know you. They, operated a certain way before, and you bring in this new thing. And did I do it 100% correctly? Like, absolutely not. But did I learn some extremely valuable lessons by walking into that and trial by fire? Absolutely. So the next times that I've done that, or the next times I will do that, I have those experiences in my head of how that worked. Now, what it did allow, was I able to instill my own culture into that practice eventually? Yes. That it takes time. You don't just go in there and, turn the page and wipe the slate clean and say, this is how it is, because the reality is the culture of that practice is what a lot of the clientele that are going to that practice go there for.
Yeah.
So you have to be cautious with that. Now, I will say, the practice I did that with, as my first one, it was, we took an old building, worked out of it for a couple of years, and then built a brand new, beautiful building. Was the clientele and the staff the same from the old building to the new building? I would say no. Was there still a lot of clients that stayed? Absolutely. That practice took off, but the culture transition. Yes, it was. Yeah. So it was a slow transition. So we were still cash flowing that whole time, and then it took off from there. So I, as much as I will hear some, the DeNovos, say like, hey, I want to have my culture from day one. I think it's just a differing of opinion. I like that cash flow, and I like that gradual change, and I like the challenge, especially the challenge of taking something that, is at, certain level, and then bringing your specialties to that practice and then seeing it grow significantly from there. And I just find it rewarding because you're not competing with somebody down the road. And not that I think that veterinarians are necessarily competing against each other, but you're taking something and adding value to it and supporting the community while still being able to have people keep their jobs, keep a practice open, keep the legacy of that practice open as well.
I think the most beautiful part, however, of buying a practice versus starting a DeNovo is your ability to pay yourself the moment you walk through those doors, because a lot of people, because our DeNovos didn't take a wage for almost a year. And that is a big plus in buying an existing practice, that you can, still put your culture in practice, but it's slower transition because you are working with, I guess, an industry who doesn't like change. I mean, we've seen that in the last 30, 50 years. I mean, I haven't been in that for 50 years by myself, but looking at what's been happening in the past and this is how it's done. No, it's not how it's done. Not the only way how it's done. We can do things differently and better. And that's the whole point of challenging the status quo, in ensuring that we can make things better and that we continue to have that process and innovative on how to make things more efficient. But this is the whole point. This is the whole point of doing this, this podcast anyway. But, AI has made things a lot more efficient, but it's really whether we choose to embrace it or not is a different mindset. And I think that's all part of that.
Yeah, growth mindset is huge for no matter what you're doing. It's like I've learned from my mentors, but can things be done better? Or it's like, yeah, you can take everything that you learned in the past. I think there's an excerpt called like building on the shoulders of giants. Like I can take everything that I've learned from the past, but what value add can I provide to what my mentors have given me, to my practice model or my whatever? It doesn't even have to be about practice, to make it better for the next generation. We need to have this continual improvement. I'm not saying we need to wipe the slate clean of everything we've learned in the past, because obviously we're in a very sought after industry at this point. And, things do work well from a profit standpoint, but there are problems that we need to address with new ways of thinking, new, adapting and adopting new technologies and new ways of doing things in order to see us continue to succeed into the future as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Keith, I love everything that we've talked about today, but where can people find you or learn more about you?
Yeah, my website is truevetpotential.com. That'll link to all three of those types of models that I talked about. Specifically, I would advise anybody who's thinking about practice ownership, from student to early career veterinarian, to join the Future Practice Owner Society. There is a fee for it, but that's so that I can get good speakers in, good educational material in, so that we can all learn from one another. And this will grow with time. There will be networking events. There will be, there are going to be monthly calls at least. And, it's going to grow with time, but it's very affordable. It's $250 for the year. And it's going to provide access to a lot of really, really intelligent people in the industry who I think are way smarter than I am. I just want to be able to aggregate a lot of that information to make ownership more accessible to everybody. Those interested in partnering, same thing, that you can see that on my website. And then everything will link to my True Vet website from there, which will be the branded hospitals that I'll be launching as well.
Right. I mean, just out of curiosity, do you have a logo with like a three-headed monster? Just out of curiosity.
No three-headed monster logo at this point. So I might scare some people away, or maybe give some ideas of what types of animals we treat.
Maybe not like a corgi and a
yeah.
I don't know. What's the other one? The pug. And they're all trying to cut each other's toenails or something like that.
For our first rebrand in several years, maybe we'll have to consider that logo there. Follow me on LinkedIn as well. And I do have a YouTube channel that's launching as well to go through the process and show the process of practice ownership, and also just provide some insight, much like this. So sometimes it helps to flip the camera on and spew your ideas out there, and it strikes a chord with somebody somewhere.
Nice. Excellent. Mate, Keith, I thank you so much for being my first guest for the management sector of our VetStory podcast. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the vision that you've got. It would be absolutely successful, because people need something like that to be more accessible to buying a practice, to get into ownership. And I think they have been scared off with the fear of getting the work-life balance, as you said, and even the affordability. I mean, as I said, corporate is coming in and offering some generational wealth, and that could be well and truly appealing to most, especially if they've got a 3-4 doctor practice. But for the ones that are 1 doctor practice, they're not, I guess, appealing to corporate. Yep. And that could be an avenue for growth for the next person.
There's value in those. And, this creates a win-win-win scenario. Win for the selling veterinarian, because they do have an opportunity to exit and retire. A win for the veterinarian that's coming in, because they get into ownership and they have somebody to back them. And a win for the community, because the reality is a lot of these smaller practices, if they don't find somebody to buy, then they're going to close. And that leaves the community absent another veterinarian. So it's a must that we do something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you around the traps nonetheless, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a great chat as always.
Thanks, mate. And thanks for joining us today. That's all we have time for. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a story that you'd love to share and want to come on the show, drop me an email, reese@ivmsolutions.org. This podcast was brought to you by IVMS, Innovative Veterinary Management Solutions. If you are tired of being a business operator and want to be a business owner, then give me a call. If you've heard of systems like Traction, EOS, Lean, 4DX, and other similar systems, they're all great systems, but none of them are vet specific. I have taken the best of every system, rebuilt them using our industry KPI standards and your practice core metrics, because every practice is different. I will bring your vision to life, get your team brought in and aligned to your long-term goals. I will systemize your practice so you can have more time doing what you love to do. Stop having people rely on you. Practice ownership should not be this hard. Let's move from being a business operator and move into the business owner category. If that interests you, go to our website, www.ivmsolutions.org. That is I for India, V for vet, M for management, solutions.org. Until next time, take care.